the Finance Committee.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're open. You guys all set? Have you opened your meeting?
We're open.
Outstanding. So tonight, we're gonna talk about the presentation in regards to Article 12 for the annual, special town meeting for the sewer, that the Water Department is proposing this article and backing this article. We're gonna have a vote later on to kind of codify that. We're gonna have a presentation tonight. Is Nick on?
Nick is on, yep. Nick, can
Nick
you hear?
Lawler. Nick Lawler is our general manager. He is gonna start the presentation off. And then the Director of Finance, in regards to this one article, is gonna also participate in this presentation. And then we'll do the answers, questions and answers, and whatever the Fincom has for questions, we'll try and answer from there. So Nick?
Thanks, Jimmy. We do have Bruce Trumbull on as well. Dave, I'm not sure if you could let him in. I think
He unmuted me.
Yep, he's here.
He unmuted me.
Oh, okay. Hey, Bruce.
Thank you.
All right, Dave, do you want to jump right into the presentation?
Yep, let me share my screen.
Great, thanks, Dave. So, I think Jimmy did a good job opening us up here and let everybody know why we're here. Article 12 is a very important article for the community, very important article for the Light and Water Department as well. Water Department's obviously the same as the sewer department in this situation. It's been a project that we've been working on now for at least the Water Department for at least 3 to 5 years. And I know this project's gone on for probably pushing 2 decades between select board and our board and previous generations of water department and town employees. We're excited that we're getting closer to bringing this project forward. And obviously this ties in closely with the partnership with 550 King Street. So Dave, I don't know if you want to jump to the next slide. When we got this project back in 2020, the first thing that the Board of Commissioners wanted to do, I'm just gonna give a little brief history just because I think it's important.
Recording in progress.
To see, where were we going, how we got here, and also how it ties to the opportunity that's down in front of us. But the first thing that our board wanted to do was peer review of the work that was already done by Weston and Sampson to confirm a few different findings from their work, to complete a wastewater needs assessment. And that was a big part of understanding what does the town of Littleton need, not just now, not just 5 years from now, but over the life of what we envision the sewer system to be. What are the total needs of the community? And that's what that needs assessment accomplished for us. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. We've done several community meetings throughout the way. Different permitting processes have taken place. We do have a site acquisition now. That was a part of, a town meeting article a couple of years ago. We did acquire a site for a treatment plant facility. And we're in the middle of designing that plant at 242 King Street. And we feel that site is a great site for a sewer plant for a lot of different reasons. But mainly, we have the ability to tuck this sewer plant up against 495 with natural buffer between roads and residences. And we're underway on a couple different pieces of the project. We're designing right now the discharge site, which again was approved maybe a time in a year ago or so, for designing construction of the discharge site at the high school. And remember, that's the big leaching field that the effluent water goes to. And we're also in the middle of the design of the whole entire system itself that CDM Smith is doing. So David, I'm going to jump to the next slide. And I think we often forget to tell the story of why this project even started. And it was a big part due to environmental needs and protecting zone 2 of our valuable aquifer for the Beaver Brook aquifer for our wells at Beaver Brook. And now with the pumping capacities that we've increased at Beaver Brook over the last couple of years due to the growth of our community, almost the entirety of the Littleton Common is within zone 2. which just makes this a much more needed environmental project. And I know it's one thing that we often forget to talk about, so I just didn't want to leave that part out. When we did the needs assessment, some of the things that were identified in the total build out were these 4 different phases were identified as potential areas that could be sewered at some point in time if future boards choose to sewer these areas of town. And you can see and this is one of the areas that's the most important area for a lot of different reasons. The common, that's the yellow area that is really right in the middle, obviously, of the town. That's 1A. You'll see that throughout our reports. And then 1B is the Beaver Point area. And those are really the first 2 areas we looked at. And then there's some other areas. There's the depot and there's the Air Road Industrial Park, and also Goldsmith Street was looked at in the needs assessment. And then if you look at all the wastewater needs of those areas, it totaled about 180,000 gallons per day, which, part of the work that Weston and Sampson actually did was they designed and started to do the permit for the discharge at the high school. And we're in the process of getting a permit for 208,000 gallons today, which would support the total build out of the town of Littleton if you were to sewer all 4 of those areas. You can kind of see it there in that table. It talks about 1A, 1B, 2, 3, and 4. And it wasn't just existing wastewater flow. It also looked at what the estimated build out wastewater flow would be if those areas were developed. And Marion Toolhill and the planning board and the planning department had a big part of working with CDM Smith to try to identify how those areas could be built out. So that's where that came from. And the only reason I put this in here is, I know one of the questions I think was in front of the Fincom maybe a month ago was, is the discharge site big enough to support what we're already trying to support plus 550 King Street? The answer is yes, but this is kind of the first slide that will show you why that's true. Dave, next slide. Thanks. So we were in the process of designing 175,000 gallon per day discharge site, trying to permit it for 208,000 gallons per day. The existing, because remember there's already an existing sewer plant, and that's probably another thing that we forget to kind of talk about is it's really a Littleton sewer expansion. It's not a brand new facility. It'll be a complete replacement, but we already have a sewer plant that's in dire need of replacement. And we have discharge site as well with 17,600 gallons per day existing. And we were right in the middle of designing this, working with the school department, trying to get this out to bid late fall, early winter for construction in the spring. And we were really identifying the blue shades that you see on that diagram on the right there. And that would get you 175,000 gallons per day. We've changed our design and bids now to add the 2 green columns in between the blue areas to add another 33,000 gallons or roughly 34,000 gallons to give us that 208. And then because we need that to support 550 King Street and the 1A, the common area. But the one other thing I want to point out is there's the 2 larger green rectangular shapes below where we're building that are potential reserve recharge areas that would get us up over 300,000 gallons today, which would still support the 4 phases plus 550 King Street, from what we can tell at this time, given the information that we have. Next, Dave. So this was the number that really got circulated again, maybe 6 to 8 weeks ago. And it was the first number that we had from CDM Smith. It was just shy of $40 million. And this was the reason why this number got put out. It was in the state revolving fund loan program. We applied for a loan through the Mass Clean Water Trust, similar to what we did with Wickham Ave. No, with Wickham Ave, we were able to get a 0% loan because of PFAS. We estimate this loan to be 1.5%. And we wanted this number to be as large as possible within reason to be able to make sure we secured the loan, almost like a pre-mortgage, pre-financing ask from the state to make sure the money was there when the design was complete. This number was high. We knew it was high, but we weren't at the point yet at the time to start critiquing these numbers. I mean, there's a few obvious ones in there. We've talked about these now at a few different meetings, but the police detail cost of $1.5 million is obviously an absurd number. It's much, much less than that. And there's a few other ones in there that we've been able to scrutinize with the thanks of several Fincom members and a representative from the board. This number now, after some of that scrutiny, and also we've opened some proposals up for some equipment. The membrane bioreactor equipment, that's the filters inside the plant. Those were estimated to be at $3.5 million, and we just opened that bid last week, and they're about $1.4 million. So we were able to shave $2 million off there. And plus, when that $3.5 million went through all these contingencies, and you can see in the verbiage below the table, but there was a 25% construction contingency, a 20% project contingency, and 20% engineering contingency, and that made that $3.5 million number closer to $7 when you got it all the way through the end to the $39,950 number. So that was one way we were able to work with CDM Smith and representatives of the town, Alicia and Sean and the Fincom, and to really flush these numbers out. Next slide, Dave. So this graphic here is from a March board meeting. It was a joint board meeting with the select board and the commissioners. And it re-emphasizes the fact that we have a plant currently operational. There's 6 municipal buildings connected to it, and the plant's end of life. It needs to be most likely replaced or significant money put into it within the next 1 to 5 years. So when we had that meeting, we were trying to go through the process of options for the boards is what to do. And these were the different scenarios that we came up with at the water department. Scenario A1 was rehab, replacing the existing facility at the high school. And I can't see the numbers because my, let's see if I can move this.
6.5 million, Nick?
Yeah, 6.5 million. And then A2 was, and I think both boards, understand that the plant would be much better served to get it off the school property. So this was moving the treatment facility to 242 King Street, which would require a pumping station needed to be built at the high school because you still need to take care of the sewage at the high school. And that came in around 13 million. Again, I can't see the number exactly, but it's right around 13 million. And then both those proposals were 20,000 gallons per day. So they weren't really letting us really grow into anything. And it was still just going to be 100% the town, which neither board really liked at the time, because the thought was we should be building for the future and building for more customers to help alleviate that operating cost and the capital cost that was going to be put on the town. So then scenario B was a 50,000 gallon per day plant, but not touching any of the infrastructure in the road. And then C, and that's eventually what the two boards have decided to work on it, and they would replace the spine, what got termed. So Great Road and King Street, we get all the new infrastructure that the design called for. You'd have a new plant for 50,000 gallons per day at 242 King Street, and you'd really be built to start connecting future streets or properties, as they came into town. And this was right around $27 million. This is what we were designing before 550 King Street got purchased by the Lapoli companies. And then scenario D was the estimated cost. It was just under $37 million to complete the full design for the common and connect all the parcels that were identified in the sewer legislation in the sewer district. So you can see, no matter what we ended up bringing forward at town meeting, the town was going to have to invest significant monies into this infrastructure. Next slide, Dave. So this is the latest table. We just got this. It was either last night or this morning from CDM Smith. And again, we've been updating this table. The members of the Fincom that have been working with us on this will recognize it. And this is the one that started off, just under 40 million. We're down to just over 25 million. And I just want to kind of explain some of the columns so we understand what we're looking at here, but the opinion of probable cost, construction cost, that's the actual estimate of what they think the project will cost, without any, with the typical variables, not being anything crazy. They add in right away a 25% construction contingency, and that's for all the variables that they don't quite know yet. They just did the borings in the field, stuff like that. Is there ledge? Is there issues with the site? Is there issues with topography, stuff like that? And so they add a base of 25% to take into account for that. And then they sum those two columns to get the total opinion and probable cost plus the construction contingency. And then the next column right in the middle there is the midpoint of construction. So this project is going to be built over a couple of years. So what they do is they bring that project cost, the what's in A plus what's in column A plus the contingencies to the midpoint of the construction and try to levelize the cost of all the materials, because obviously there's inflation, so the cost of materials is going up. We added in a 10% project contingency, and that's for things that maybe the town and the water department would like to see as they go through the design project process. And then there's 10% engineering implementation, which is another $2 million, which again, I think these numbers are still pretty high. It's $2.3 million for engineering services. And again, I always bring this back to Wickham Ave. It's one of the most complicated technical projects that this town has taken on with the PFAS mitigation. And we're managing that project in-house. The Board of Commissioners supported me many years ago to get my professional engineering license, which gives us the ability for me to be the project manager and utilize our great resources within the town. And that project, the engineering services, are just under $700,000. So I think these numbers are still highly conservative, as we bring them forward. And that's how we got the 25 million. One of the things that makes this vote very important is, dealing with the MassWorks people. They like to see authorizations from the town. They want to see the town supporting a project. So getting a borrow authorization allows us to leverage that into future MassWorks grants. And the 550 King Street project it checks all the boxes for MassWorks grants. We've been given estimates of $6 million of what we could potentially get. Now, again, that's an assumption. That doesn't mean we don't have it. It's something in hand. But we do feel highly confident that we can get a MassWorks grant tied to that project. And then there's ARPA money that the select board controls and would have the ability to maybe use some of that money towards this project as well.
Nick,
So the thought.
Nick,
Yep.
could you just recap on this chart, the membrane, please?
Right. So before, if anybody saw any of the earlier tables, that MBR equipment, which is the fourth row, it's in there at 1.4 million. That was buried in the treatment plant number, so the row above that. We broke that out because we have that price firm now. That proposal's been opened. We went through an RFP 30B process to go through a qualifications-based process to choose this equipment, and that was the price for what was chosen. So that's a fixed number. That whoever wins this bid will have to incorporate that proposal in their bid. And again, that number there, it's $1.4 million, and they were carrying $3.5 million for that. And again, it went through all those contingencies because it wasn't backed out, and at the end, it looked like $7 million. So now that's a known number at this point.
Thank you.
Any questions on this slide? I know there's a lot going on here. There might be some questions from the group. Well, you're either frozen or all happy.
No, it's hard. It's hard for us to see specific numbers. So I'm glad you're speaking to it because I think it's important.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any
Yeah, no real question. I understand it's tough to absorb without having access.
I mean, the bottom line that here is the numbers come down, I think from our last meeting, where were we at?
27.
27, so it's come down a couple million, so.
And that was just on one piece of equipment.
Yeah, but this is probably this is a solid number, at least at town meeting, and hopefully we continue to go in
The right direction.
that direction. I don't see why we
Absolutely.
can go the other way at this point.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the grants, you know, Mass Works that comes in
Right.
even more.
Yeah, I mean, CDM, their engineers, they don't really like giving cost numbers out before the design, before the bids are in, which isn't, ideal for, for a lot of communities. So they took a really conservative approach with these numbers, because I don't think they want to come in low. They want to make sure that, they come in with a number that's higher than what we're going to get. And we see that on every project we've done with CDM. Everyone has come in drastically lower once we go out the bid. And I think that's shown here with that MBR equipment. That came in at 1.4 million. They were estimating 3.5. So, which I think is good news for the group and for our numbers moving forward.
Go ahead, Steve.
When will we know about MassWorks grants?
Well, I think you have to, depending on the Lapoli situation, getting through their planning process, through the planning board. The state wants to know what you're doing, how many jobs it's gonna create, and, all other types of statistics that relate to the project at 550 King Street. So, we've heard from, folks that have done this, asked for these grants, and based on what the project, could be, that's where we're getting the $6 million estimate. But you gotta wait, I mean, this is just the start of the process to get there. It's gotta go through the planning process first, too. And more importantly, Article 11 next Monday for the rezoning has to happen for us to even ask for money. So, yeah, it's gonna be a while. But that's.
Yeah, Steve, to answer that question a little bit more specifically, I think there's a MassWorks application process that happens, and I think they're due sometime either late winter or early spring. So we would obviously work with the developers in the town. Anthony was a big supporter last time we got a MassWorks grant, and the grants come through the town. We work together on whenever the next round of applications are due.
But if it doesn't meet, if we can't fit those timeframes, it just gets bumped up for the next
year.
For the next process. All right, you wanna get into Alicia's part piece? Are you all set, Nick? Any other questions or concerns? And again, at the end of the presentation, we'll be more than happy to answer any other questions that you may think of during the process.
So the next slide would have showed that 25 million less the 6 million MassWorks anticipated, less the American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds of the 2,037,000. So the town would expect to borrow about 17,058,29 to be repaid through the enterprise fund by means of betterment assessments. There is potential additional funding. There's also a chance additional state funds could be administered through the state, as the state also has ARPA funding in addition to the town for infrastructure use. And in addition, there is a pending federal legislation for infrastructure that passed the Senate but is still being discussed at the House. If you go to.
And if I could just add to that, when this ARPA money is gonna show up in this state, they're gonna look for shovel-ready projects. And this will be, hopefully, by that time, a shovel-ready project. And with working through our legislators, both federal and state, I think we have a great opportunity here as a town to tap into some of those funds also.
This slide shows what the IBM taxes are prior to vacancy. So right now, the building is assessed at 56.8 million, the outbuilding at 1.1 million, the land at 7.9 for 65.9 million, which equates to $1,810,236 in tax dollars. With the building being vacant, the building would then decline down to an assessment of $28,896,300 with an outbuilding of 1.1, the land at 7.9 for a total value of $38 million. This would be a $1,042,720 tax dollars, which equates to a $767,517 revenue loss, which would then be picked up by the residential class. The estimated value decrease of the $27,970 is a tax burden shift to the remainder of the tax base. The tax revenue decrease at 550 King Street of $767,517. This would add approximately 26 cents per thousand to a single tax rate, or $129 to the average residential tax bill before 2.5%. The current treatment plant at the high school will require replacement within 3 to 5 years. The cost is the sole responsibility of the town as the only user, and that's estimated to be between $6.5 million for the new system at the high school or $13 million for replacement of the system at 242 King Street. The potential rezoning of 550 King Street. The town is no longer the largest user of the system. The responsibility shifts as follows based on estimated gallons per day. 60% proposed redevelopment 550 King Street, 20% municipal buildings, 20% to the other users located in the district. So the $17,058,000 high-end net cost after potential grants, the town would be responsible for $3.4 million of the system's construction costs.
Alicia, can you go back that slide for 1 second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when Alicia put this slide together, I think it does a good job capturing, really a couple different options here. If the town was to do this on their own, they're looking at somewhere between $6.5 million to $13 million, depending on where they site the plant. Due to the 550 King Street, the large use there, and that 60-20-20 split, that's also highly conservative. There's some projections that show that 60% are a lot higher than that, and the municipal buildings a lot lower. That betterment fee to the town could be a lot lower than 3.4 million. And we're still working on those numbers and hoping to have them finalized by town meeting. We've hired Raffles, who's a consultant, financial consulting company, to actually help us develop a good betterment process for this. It lays out the two opportunities, but also lays it out in a way it's a worst case scenario to the community. The $3.4 million number will end up being a lot higher than the number that you guys end up seeing, hopefully at town meeting.
And I think the story is also that, at a minimum, the 6.5 million is cut in half on the high end of the 3.4. So, as this 550 gets developed and, or the zoning gets changed, we move forward with 550, the cost of the town, the burden to the town and the taxpayers is even gonna shrink even more. If we do nothing with 550, it's gonna cost a lot more money than if we do something with 550. That's what this slide is really saying.
Yeah, and the betterments will be done in a way that's proportional to the usage. So there's gonna be no subsidizing from the tax base to the commercial customers. You'll pay for how you're gonna use the system.
We have a couple questions.
Just on the three different sections, on the top section, if 550 King Street gets developed, what happens to that 129 that's in the top section?
So that 129 is still going to happen because it's going to take time for that construction to happen. So once the construction does happen, there's some slides ahead.
Okay.
So if we don't mind jumping to the potential future valuation, thank you. So based on the submitted plans of between 80 to 115 million, estimating very conservatively the potential value at 79,462,950, the tax dollars would be 1,762,200. Estimated residential at 760,088, estimated commercial at 1,201,112. This lower end valuation brings the town close to the pre-vacancy levels of where the taxes were with IBM. Estimating conservatively, including the miscellaneous commercial site, because we're not sure what they're gonna do with that yet. The potential total value could be 115 million. Estimated total tax dollars would be 2.498 or 2.5 million. Estimated residential would be 1.194750. Estimated commercial at 1.303,400. So this high-end valuation increases property tax receipts at the parcel by approximately 687,914 over pre-vacancy levels.
Good news.
Yes, and we were considering a portion of the new growth associated with this value increase could be earmarked to support the town's portion of the project, further reducing the burden on the taxpayer.
And then on those other two sections, do you, if you go back to the next slide, on that second section, talking about rebuilding or refurbishing the existing system?
Replacing.
Replacing?
Yep.
And then the section below, what would the impact be to an average house now? Or if we did the middle section replacing, what would the impact be? And on the bottom section with going with the 60-20-20 with the sewer, what would the dollar impact be?
So it would be 100% on the town for the 6.5 to 13 million. So that'd be 100% on the town. Versus if you did the rezoning, it would be 20% on the town. And the cost would go down from the 6.5 or 13 to 3, which we actually think is gonna be lower than that. That's the high end that I'm putting, just to be conservative. I'd rather over than under. But we're gonna get better cost estimates, like Nick said, from Raftelis.
I don't know if I'm saying it the right way. So like in the first section, you have the 129 per average household.
Yes,
So in the second section and the third section, what would the cost to an average household be?
Because you wouldn't have,
Yeah,
it wouldn't
so-
be 60-20-20, it'd be
Right,
100.
right.
so it'd be 100%.
What's the cost to the taxpayer at 6.5?
Yes.
And what's the cost to the taxpayer at 13?
That's something we're gonna need.
Or 3.
probably,
Yeah.
Right.
you know, for town meeting.
Okay.
That's a good point, we should have probably had that into.
Yeah, we can put
That's how we
another.
do
It depends on how it's being paid. Like in that top section, that 129 that you're talking about, what's sitting there right now for IBM, 550 King, is in the tax base now. That value goes away, it gets picked up by all the other taxpayers in town.
Right.
And that's the estimate of that 129.
I guess what I'm
But
trying
for
to
the
figure
other
out.
sections, that $3 million, it depends how the town can pick that up. So they would do a borrowing, we'd probably pay for it inside the levy. It's either, pay for it through the operating budget as part of the debt service and cut something else. Because you wouldn't be increasing taxes to pay for it, it's not outside the levy.
We're also looking at other potential ways of decreasing the cost to the taxpayers. I don't want to 100% talk on it until I get town council approval, but we're looking at other ways that we're going to be presenting to, that we could further reduce the cost.
But your point, you have a very good point in regards to that second, the 6.5 and the 13. What is it per household? I think Alicia can figure that out and add it to this, so that that question comes up to town meeting, we'll be able to say 126, it's gonna go to 156 or 186 for the 6.5 and 220 or whatever it may be. I'm estimating these aren't real numbers. For the 13 million. So you'll have that.
Yeah, that'd be helpful, because if I'm paying $100 today, is it gonna be 120, or $100 a year today, is it gonna be 120 after we do this? Right, just trying to get that ballpark in my head.
Well, what the impact, if the zoning happens and gets approved, and if the Article 12 is passed, there should not be an impact on the taxpayers.
After a couple of years.
Correct. Because of the valuation of IBM, that's gonna be an actual hit to the taxpayers. But the objective here is not to increase anybody's taxes for this.
Right.
Have the users pay for it.
And that'd be good to know, so yeah,
Yes.
that's perfect, yep.
Right?
I think you've answered some of the questions along the way, but the 129 number, how long do you think we're gonna be paying that on the average taxpayer? And isn't it, because you're looking at doing it inside the levy, it's subject to 2.5% increase each year?
Correct.
So how many years do we think that we'll need to pay for that?
So on the proposed rezoning mixed use slide, yes, thank you. So the developer estimates the following investment costs. So they're, for phase one construction, they are estimating to begin next summer, June 1st, 2022, which will take approximately 2 years to complete, so about 2 years at least. And that's estimated, they're estimating to put in 175 million. Phase two would begin in 2024 and be completed in 2026. That's estimated at 80 million. Phase three would be tenant-specific and could occur anytime, either concurrent with the other phases or after, and that's estimated at another 125 million.
So if I'm understanding you right, worst-case scenario, we're looking at like $129 for a couple of years?
For at least 2 years, yes.
For at least 2 years, but how long could it go out to?
4.
4. A lot of money. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, the 20% other users, is that all businesses that have to opt in that you're figuring?
Businesses.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Right.
there's existing customers in the comment and estimated build out, that's correct. And that, the number is actually a little higher than 20%. It's gonna, I think it's gonna be about 25, and municipal buildings will be a little bit less. But, you know, that's what we have right now.
So all commercial has to tie in.
The only.
Failed residential has to tie in as well, correct?
Well, residential is opt-in, opt-out.
Even with even if they have a failed system?
There are
Resident-
some stipulations in that.
For the failed?
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. The commercial parcels don't have the opt-in, opt-out right. They're automatically opted in. And that's probably a good opportunity to mention that the commissioners had already by vote extended the district onto 550 King Street. So 550 King Street is in the district now. They don't have an option. They're opted in automatically. In residential, they do. It's an opt-in, opt-out, but they have to have a system that's functional. And there's criteria in the special legislation that was passed 3-4 years ago that spells out, you know, what a working system is.
I agree.
I have one more question. So the design that you have for the new system, how expandable is that? Could that support most of the town? Should down the road you want to add the lake or add something else down the road?
So I'll let Nick, it goes back to our leaching field, so to speak. That maxes out the system, period, unless we expand it to another site. So Nick, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so that's right, the discharge site, remember that slide that showed the future reserve areas would have the ability to be expanded to fit all 4 phases. By the time you get there, I'll be on to the next piece. But yeah, that's it right there. So, you know, that could go up to 313,000 gallons a day, which will support 550 King Street and 4 phases. And those 4 phases that we chose, those can change in the future. There's nothing set in stone that says we have to do those 4 areas. If future boards pick different areas, they pick different areas. But that, it can be expanded to that 313,000 gallons per day. And the plant as well, the footprint is going to be able to, and the building will support expanding the inside, the filtration equipment to that capacity as well. And that's one thing that the commissioners have stressed every time we talk about this in one of our meetings is to make sure that this project is done in a manner that's expandable. That we're not digging up roads again, 10 years from now. The pipes that are being put in the ground are being sized to carry out at least the 4 phases that we identify. Whether or not they get built, the pipes that we're putting in will support that.
Smart sewering.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just a conclusion slide.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead,
so
Jeff.
the 129 that's on that last slide per resident is if we do nothing and the IBM revenue goes away, that's when we realize that 129.
Correct.
Right.
So without rezoning 550 King Street, we're going to be paying that no matter what.
It's coming.
It's coming. I mean,
Yep.
if that ends up becoming a distribution center, which 3 of the 4 developers that came before the select board to present what they wanted to do at that site, talked about putting in trucking terminals. One of them had 123 dock locations. It's a lot of trucks going through our town. And from what I understand, the state doesn't want any trucks going down Great Road that close to 495 and the left turn, and there's safety concerns and all that kind of stuff. So those trucks would end up going either 110 into Westford or down King Street past Russell Street, where you have two of our schools, in order to get on 495 and get to Route 2. So it's,
But as, you know,
that 129 is gonna happen.
for at least 2 years,
Right.
based on what the developer is saying.
Right, so regardless of how people vote on Monday, that's happening.
It's happening, yep.
Unless you split the tax rate somehow, shift it more.
There's only so much we can shift though, Greg, you know, from the classification hearings. There's only so, we can only go up by so much.
In conclusion, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I've been dreading this presentation to the Fincom for years because we've never had the timing, the user, and for once, I think we have it, and we lucked out, 550 King Street, that potential development really makes this project financially feasible. All the other scenarios before, we're looking at, how can we, look at the tax rate to help us build this project because it was the right thing to do. Now we don't have to do that. There's no subsidy. The users will pay, and that's great. The time is right. So that's number one. It's not a build it and they will come. It's they're here, and now we need to build infrastructure to support them. It doesn't interfere with the future sewer goals. I mean, as we stated, the way this is being designed and the way that we're laying this out and building it out, whether it's 20, 30, 50 years from now, the town can expand this to sewer the 4 phases that we've identified or different areas if they choose be. So it doesn't impact or interfere with those future needs. It solves an environmental impact. It takes all those nitrates out of the common, which is now a Zone 2 protected area, and gets it to outside of Zone 2 and keeps the water in our watershed. When we did that holistic view, we looked at so many different ways to try to figure out how to sewer this common, and one was connected to air and losing that water. This does it all. It protects Zone 2 and keeps that water in our watershed.
And that's the Beaver Brook watershed that's key to this town.
Yep.
We're recharging back into that watershed.
Yeah, it's very key. It's all of our wells are in that watershed right now, so keeping that water well cool is a very good thing. It's something, I know Bruce is on the phone, but it's something he advocated for when we were looking at all these different options. Again, the project's finally financially feasible. Again, we're not asking for a subsidy, which is it's a great feeling. It's something I didn't want to have to do. Once we get this authorization, we feel that there's granting opportunities there. It shifts not just the capital cost, but the operating cost from 100% from the town to some sort of mix base between existing and future economic uses in the common. Right now, and I think Steve asked this question last week, but we're already paying for design. We acquired a site. The town's already invested, well over, $3-4 million into this project. And this will give us the opportunity to spread some of even those costs out across the users, not just the town. The last couple of bullets there, I think, are for Alicia. You want to talk on the building permit revenue, Alicia?
Sure, so that will increase our building permit revenue, which increases our local receipts, which is good. Increases new growth, which may offset or increase tax revenues, and borrowing will be repaid through the betterment assessments and user charges, as we said, instead of being subsidized through the levy.
Yeah, and also on another note, it helps the light and water departments as far as revenue as well, that we don't have right now with IBM on the electric side.
That's a great point, Ivan. IBM, HP, we've been blessed for years to have a great load right there. It's kept our rates low for a long period of time, and to have something like this come back into town will help us keep those rates low, which is always a a great feeling that we have some of the lowest electric rates in the state, and we're proud of it.
Any other questions from FinCom?
I don't know what you have left on your agenda. Do you have other?
This is it.
So I guess if you guys close your meeting, we
Well,
can.
sure. Tyler, you had your...
Yeah, I have one. Just, I mean, obviously, 550 King Street's a godsend. It makes the finances and everything work. If the rezoning doesn't pass, are we gonna move forward with the article?
We're going to withdraw the article if the zoning doesn't pass.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
So-
question.
Yeah, so are you guys, Gary, are you gonna take a vote on
Yeah, I
Article
plan,
12 tonight?
yeah, I plan on doing that, and we have a couple other business items we have to do
Okay.
as well. A couple reserve fund transfers, I think. But-
Sure,
And
sure.
then, that's really, it's a small agenda, so.
So I'd like, because we haven't codified or taken a vote on Article 12 yet, but we're kind of waiting for
Oh, okay.
this joint meeting
Yeah, okay.
to kind of codify what the FinCom and Water Commissioners are support, non-support type of thing. So I'd look for a motion for the support of Article 12.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we support Article 12 at special town meeting.
I'll second that.
And made and seconded. We'll do a roll call vote. Ivan?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
And I am a yes. I don't know if you could do your vote now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody comfortable?
Has the select board voted on this?
Yes.
The select board has voted. They actually
And
voted
they
with the number was a little bit higher, I think.
Yeah.
But like we said last meeting, we wanted to get it as close as we could. so.
Is the article staying at 28?
No. We're
25.
refining it down to the 25.
So could I have that number that do you know that number yet?
It's, we'll get it to you right now.
Dave's pulling up his evidence.
Yeah, zoom in.
25,096, I think that says.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Dan, I think we were just gonna lower the 25 even.
25 even.
So or motion, somebody's supposed to.
Yeah, motion to support Article 12 in special town meeting.
Motion's been made, any second?
Second.
Moved and second, and any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. I'll do a roll call as well. Alvin?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Aye. Tom? Tyler? No, sorry. My brain, he just ripped his neck.
Aye.
Aye. Craig? And I'm an aye. That's a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much, we appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
If you have any questions, by all means, we're here for anybody watching tonight. Get in touch with us. This presentation will also be on the website after town meeting, before town meeting. I don't know if we've decided.
I know we're gonna get more numbers, hopefully tomorrow by the end of this week, so if I can update some more, I'd like to get more transparent as I can for town
Absolutely.
meeting.
And we have a webinar tomorrow night.
And there is a webinar tomorrow night on the sewer. So by all means, you can get the information on our website and the Select Board's website. And please call in with any questions that anybody may have. The more we can get answered prior to Monday night, the better off we'll all be. So thank you very much. I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
It's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye. Bruce?
Bruce?
Aye. Motion